Well, good morning. How are you all doing? You doing okay? It's good to see you. I'm glad that you are here. This is a campus week, and some of you, this might be new enough to you. This could be your first time here that it bears a little bit of explanation. So we, Crosswalk, are Crosswalk Chattanooga, a part of a global network of Crosswalk churches. In fact, last weekend, Reno became our 11th campus church. And we also have 3 affiliates. Those are churches that partner with us on content and a lot of the things that they would like to make use of, but they're not actually Crosswalk churches. And then there are 9 Love Well groups as we continue. Maybe you have someone you love that you feel like is in a little bit of a desert area for what you've come to love here. Being a part of this global network of churches is part of the hope that we have, that others that we care about might find their place in Jesus in a Crosswalk campus somewhere. So with regularity then, we are, as in last week, we finished the Belonging series. Next week we will begin the second season of It's Complicated, taking a look at the life of David with some of the Psalms. But this week is a kind of an in-between week where all the campuses kind of do their own thing. And you might be able to figure out today's going to have a little bit to do with coffee. So, okay, good. Somebody had some. So that's where we're headed. I think it's fair to say it can be different to have a relationship with someone you cannot see or hear, at least in the conventional ways. Some people think of what the Christian describes in their walk with Jesus kind of like they're talking about an imaginary friend. All along, from the beginning of time, God has made use of special devices to try to help us grow in Him, cling to Him, know Him, relate to Him, feel Him. Jesus, I just want to touch you is kind of a difficult thing to process. Maybe we've got a little bit of help today. Now, the first thing I need to say is some of you, it's fair to understand, are not coffee drinkers. Some of you are so much so that you've got very specific things you want to say and maybe even shout out right now. Some of you drink coffee black and think that anyone who doesn't, well, they ought to grow up just a little bit. Well, good for you, Brian. Good for you. Some of you have I have a go-to. Mine, some of you would know, mine is a vanilla latte. And oat milk, just if you're keeping track. Although I do almost always ask for whatever the featured drink is, okay? But maybe you have some other drink that you really prefer. Those of you that have been out to a restaurant with my wife and myself might know. You would probably recall it's a pretty common thing I might ask for is a lemonade with grenadine in it. Some of you don't know what grenadine in it is. It's a pomegranate syrup. It makes it, it turns it kind of a reddish color. And it really, every once in a while, do you know what I'm saying when I say that if you get a lemonade that's a fountain lemonade, it's just kind of, throw some grenadine in there. And it wakes it up. I like it. You might have something else. What I want you to do as we're getting going is I want you to think of a favorite beverage of yours. I'm going to kind of take away, and I know some of you are going to go, oh, that's not fair. Because Jesus already used this one. I'm going to take water and park it to the side. We can always go back to that. But I want you to think of a favorite drink that you might have. And if it's a hot drink, all the better. If it's something that if you held it, there would be steam possibly wafting up off of it. That's lovely. I am going to, for myself, be thinking of a vanilla latte with oat milk. Just so you know. Fair? We're good. All right. We're all kind of familiar by now with the language of triggers, right? Well. Yeah, today we use the word mostly negatively, right? And in fact, sometimes for those of us, we might even use it to kind of disparage another person. Oh, they're triggered. Triggers, so here's the crazy part. Trigger is a Dutch word for to pull, okay? So if you think about pulling a trigger, you're pulling the to pull. It feels redundant, right? In the 1830s, or 1930s though, it started to be used for just the notion of something that causes an event. Now in modern slang, it's a little bit more like it's a strong emotional reaction to something that seems a bit minor. You know, we as Christians, what we hope for is to have an emotional reaction to the presence of God, which is hard to fill and hard to touch and hard to walk into, hard to realize. And maybe it's difficult for you on a daily basis to feel like you've got, it's easier when you come into a place like this and, lots of things are stripped away, that it's dark enough and the words are on the screen and the music plays loudly and it's so you can sing. But how about in the quiet of the morning as you're getting up and starting your day? I want to encourage you to consider triggers in a positive way. Because we all have those too, right? Anybody here have a holiday trigger that's just a smell? It's like cinnamon apple cider warming on a stove. I rarely like pumpkin pie, but there's a part of the year where it's pumpkin pie season. I think you know when it is. And the smell of it is just, that's beautiful. A specific song. You ever heard somebody perk up, turn to their spouse and go, that's our song? And hopefully it continues to be a good thing. It could be even a saying that throws you somewhere. How many of you have family sayings of now adults who, when they were children, said certain things that all it takes is one person to start by throwing out one of them, and then there's this kind of like back and forth of different childhood sayings, and what it means is family. My mother, she would do this. Every once in a while, something would happen that would cause her to kind of go off on a couple of things. One of them would maybe be to share the saying my older brother blurted out at one point, looking out the window at probably about 3 years of age, watching birds flies. I gotta be careful how I enunciate. As he looked and pointed and said, look at the boybies. 2 poor 6 of them. He just meant, I love birds, and there are lots of them. He was just using numbers. But all it takes is to hear that language, and you're drawn into like this secret club of people. Because when you know, right? Hopefully, words like love well, come early, stay late. Hopefully there are triggers. For so many people, the word church is a trigger. Which way does that go for you? Oh, I hope that no matter your past and what events have occurred, that you're allowing God to reframe what church is as we come to love one another in this place in the name of Jesus. Truth is, we get to choose. We get to assign some meaning to some of these things that happen. Have you ever noticed somebody who took something that could so easily have been assigned in negative ways in their life, but then they will tell you about the positive, and it's surprising. And what they've done is they've chosen how to view that thing, how it will affect them, and what it will trigger. Jesus used triggers. Throughout time, Jesus has used triggers to spark our thinking, to try to create connection. Physical things, sayings, even smells. And in fact, often he would tell parables. Today, we're going to create together. Is it okay? We're going to create together a parable. We're going to kind of go old school, back with Jesus. We're going to invite him to kind of speak into it a bit, but create our own little trigger out of some of the things that we bump into. We'll create what I'll call a ritual trigger. Think about Matthew 13 for a second. So in Matthew 13, Jesus starts by saying, the kingdom of heaven is like, and then he goes on to about 4 different rapid fire stories, parables, and in every single one of them, he uses something from the life of the people. It'd be like he came into this place and said, okay, so the kingdom of heaven is like some Nike shoes. I don't know, something. The kingdom of heaven is like a farmer who went out to plant. You remember that one? The kingdom of heaven, so it's like wheat with choking weeds. The kingdom of heaven is like a mustard seed or like yeast. And then by the time we get to the 34th verse, Matthew will write it this way. See, Jesus always used stories and illustrations like these when speaking to the crowds. In fact, he never spoke to them without using such parables. He always used metaphors. Now, this might be a little bit, strictly speaking, a tiny bit inaccurate. He did speak in some other ways to the groups. But part of what the disciples are trying to say is that Jesus, Mark would say it too, Jesus relied on these stories that would provoke and create connection, and in part because they're implicitly embedded with triggers. In fact, it goes on to say, this fulfilled what God had spoken through the prophet. I will speak to you in parables. I will explain things hidden since the creation of the world. Boy, if that isn't our pursuit of God, to lay hold of something hidden that's important. So, for a second, why? Why these parables? One of the things Jesus actually says is, I say these things so that those who have ears will hear. It feels a lot like I haven't seen the earless among us. No, Jesus is saying some people are ready for it and some people are not. And so when I speak in parables, I can meet you where you are. Anybody here had a situation where you're moving along and then it hits you what something added up to that you observed some time ago? Wait a minute. Jesus was not disturbed by people walking out of a sermon of his and going, I got nothing. I don't even know. I don't know what that parable thing was about wheat. I mean, I like wheat. I don't understand it. Not sure. Sure, we use yeast, but. And then into the future, as a woman is kneading dough that has yeast in it, and it begins to rise and something clicks. Wait a minute. A connection. Because God uses what we see, what we can touch, what we can sip to teach us about what we can't see and struggle to understand and is hard to grab hold of. The other thing about parables, the other thing about these triggers is Jesus regularly used the most common things. The wine of this cup is my blood shed for you. You can't possibly understand as I talk to you, even these few hours before the cross, what I'm talking. You don't have any idea, but you do know what it is to drink wine. And you're going to drink it again and again. And as you do, you will remember, I gave everything for you. Taking what we can touch, what we can taste, to teach, to make real, to help me grab hold of the eternal. So before we create our own new parable, I'll give you one that's really common. Maybe you haven't thought of it this way, but it's baptism. You can see over here the baptistry is over there, and that's because we're going to have somebody baptized in the second service. In fact, meet Kim. Kim is the adult female in the picture. About 2 years ago, we dedicated little Selena, and this is her husband, Luis. Kim, anybody understand what's going on in this picture? Yeah, I wouldn't have necessarily known for sure, but this is a gender reveal because Kim is pregnant and she's getting rebaptized. I think a couple of things about it that caused me to want to pause here for a minute. One, I think Kim's story is more common than sometimes we acknowledge, and that is she was baptized when she was 15. And it was extraordinarily special to her. In fact, she's kind of resisted getting rebaptized, in part because she didn't want to kind of disparage the baptism at 15. But 18 years later, and so much has gone on, so many decisions, and she understands that Jesus forgives, that he does not need her to be rebaptized to forgive her. Amen. What she realizes is getting in that water is for her to feel it wet and warm, touchable, immersive, real. Now, maybe there's somebody here who's been wrestling in your heart of hearts. You know that there's been a kind of a journey that it just feels like it's the right thing to have the monument of rebaptism. Well, kind of hesitating because it was a real commitment those years ago. And you don't even know how your family would take it. I just encourage you, this parable, this metaphor of dying to ourselves and being risen in the life Jesus promises is available and something we can talk about. There's another thing that's going on in this photo. Some of you, because of the eye-catching blue of the previous photo, notice the blue in this photo. Kim grew up on a dairy farm, and on that dairy farm, everybody worked. Everybody worked. The week of her baptism, which she and her family, this is her father baptizing her. You might, if you really look at it, you might notice a certain tenderness that's going on in these photos, almost a protectiveness on the part of Dad. And that's because just a few days before the baptism she had so looked forward to, she was in an accident with a piece of farm equipment that took a number of her fingers. And so she has a gloved hand so that she can be baptized. Well, she and I were talking about this. What do you suppose she thinks of when she sees her hand? She could think, how did God let this happen to me on the week I was going to be baptized? And my brother has to carry this concern over having been at the power switch at the time. And my parents. And God, how could you let this happen? Her hand could trigger those kinds of thoughts, right? But you know what she tells me? Whenever she looks at her hand, it reminds her that the one who would have her walk away from Jesus is not powerful enough to take away her decision. That she gets to decide on a week that changes everything. She gets to decide for Jesus. Triggers. We all have them. Maybe you'll see her. It's one of the things I say. right? Kylie? It's one of the things I say, when we're baptized, when you're baptized in this room gets to be a trigger that sparks your recollection because you're right here in this space. And you don't ever need to forget that right here or right here, I said it out loud. I felt the water. I came bubbling back to the surface in my life with Jesus. All right, so we're going to have this new parable now. A large vanilla latte with oat milk. I mean, you got yours. Whatever that is. But I'd like you to consider the gospel according to a cup of coffee. This is an odd one, I know, but it's something you may well run into again. If it's a different beverage, you supply the beverage of your thinking, what that beverage is, because could it be that as we talk about it, as we allow God to build out a metaphor, every time I stand at this counter out here and write on a cup, probably PD, that's Pastor Dave, and then FEAT period, whatever the featured drink is, boom, that's, wait a minute. I get to allow God to make use of that cup in my walk with him. I get up really early on Saturday mornings. First thing I do, go to the kitchen and start a cup of coffee. How awesome if the first move of my day is connected to a conversation with God because of something physical that I'm gonna bump into regularly. I find it easier, actually, than reading the Bible the very first thing I do every day. To reach for a metaphor of him. So, let's unpack it just a little. Let's just do a little thinking about some of this. First of all, with a good cup of coffee, there is a wait time. Some of you, I don't know, is there anybody here who it's your thing, instant coffee? Yeah, you know better than to raise your hand. You will be scoffed out of the room. Could be some other form of drink that you really love, but there is a moment that you've said, I want this, and now you wait for it. Have you noticed that some of the best things require patience? I don't know why, but Christians seem to have forgotten it. That the best things may require patience. And so as you wait in the lobby or in your home, think about the God who says, I am rescuing you once and for all, not in an instant sort of way, in a forever kind of way. It's going to be a good cup when I'm done with it. As you wait, you begin to be able to smell the goodness is coming. I think maybe that's the perfect description of a good family of faith. Something that's smelling good while the wait is taking place. Hopefully that's what you feel when you walk in this room. No matter how difficult the week has been, that there is the smell of some good coffee. There is the aroma of God. We'll get to that a little bit more, but you remember this text, right? But those from Isaiah chapter 40, favorite, those who trust in the Lord will find new strength. Some of us can't help but think of it, those who wait on the Lord find new strength. Talking about this text with someone recently, that trust during the waiting is the call of Christ. because he's in the business of turning the most difficult things, the loss of fingers, into a powerful metaphor that he is yours to be chosen today and to bring back all the fingers you deserve in the end. But in the meantime, there is the trust, there is the wait. So those who trust in the Lord will find new strength. Wait for it. Have you had that moment? A movie that you really pitched to a friend and it got off to a slow start and you knew that, but wait for it. Wait for it. Anybody a little overconfident at the start of a roller coaster ride? Only to have that change? Wait for it. Wait for it, because strength is coming. I think this is interesting. At a cup of coffee that some of us get for a perk up, for a little more energy, right? For they, the Bible says, will soar on wings like eagles. They will run and not grow weary. They will walk and not faint. Yeah, okay, Red Bull gives you wings. That's nothing. We're talking about waiting on the God who gives us wings of a forever sort, strength to get through the meantime into our day, tough lives, difficult challenges in the midst of his refuge and rescue. And then, of course, there's the aroma. We talked about it just a little bit. Sometimes we think of it like this. God, you are good. You, kind of like in that metaphor, God smells good. You know, God says you smell good to him. I know, it's a stretch at times. And check this out from 2 Corinthians. Paul writes, "For we are to God the aroma of Christ, the fragrance of life to those seeking salvation." Maybe as I take my cup and get ready for a sip and that steam wafts up and I smell the goodness, maybe I can be reminded that God has called on me today as I sip him into my life for me to be the aroma of his presence and salvation in this community. Maybe I shouldn't just mindlessly drink that coffee. Maybe I should make a commitment to him in the middle of it. I don't know, maybe you've been doing this, but I just encourage you to consider there are triggers in your life that can help you lay hold of a present, loving Jesus who wants you to know him, who is just as frustrated as you are about how difficult that is in this weird in-between time. Psalm 141 refers to our prayers as incense, an aroma to God. Even if your wait is just 60 seconds. Right, Joyce? That's long enough to say something important to God. As you hear the drip, as you smell the fragrance, as you lift the aroma to God. There's, of course, the cup. The cup is a powerful metaphor throughout Scripture. Do you recall it in the Garden of Gethsemane? Jesus is facing the cross and he says this, "My Father, if it's possible, let this cup of suffering be taken away from me. Yet I want your will to be done, not mine." In the course of that prayer time, he steels himself for this incredible sacrifice so that as he starts to head out of the garden is flooded by oncoming torch-bearing individuals who are trying to capture, looking for him. He knows this and he heads straight into it because he has decided to drink the cup of my making and trade me his cup. If you get to have a good cup, never forget the good cup comes from Jesus. And he takes the cup of suffering for me. He'll say it to Peter, hey, put your sword back into its sheath. Don't be swinging that thing around. You're going to hurt somebody. Putting an ear back on a servant, he turns and says, should I not drink the cup? I'm taking on your sin so you can have my salvation. He said it. You see, as he lifts the cup of the covenant in the upper room just hours before, this cup is the new covenant between God and his people in agreement, confirmed with my blood, which is poured out as a sacrifice for you. Maybe it's a perfectly appropriate thing to do, just like that first cup in the morning, to take the moment to say again, it's a dumb trade, God, but I give you mine, and I take yours. I give you mine, and I take yours. 5 seconds. I give you mine, and I take yours. Tomorrow morning, I give you mine, and I take the good one. I take yours. Well, all of this is a ritual, right? That's one of the reasons coffee shops do so well these days, is because it's become kind of the new ritual gathering place. And I think it's very true that habits and patterns form rituals. Some of us have a habit we long to break, but we have formed a ritual that has us trapped. The truth is, ritual can help us stay where we want to be also. And maybe as you go through your patterns with whatever the beverage of your choosing, you can let that speak back into you of the rituals, the habits, sometimes we call them the disciplines, God invites us into that help us know him and give us strength when things are confusing. There, I promise you, will be a day when you struggle to believe. And on that day, a ritual pattern holds you. There will be a day you might not feel like coming to Crosswalk, but you said you would help check-in children. And the ritual brings you where you really know you ought to be. There will come a day when something happens that you don't have any idea how to try to explain to somebody. But your habit, your pattern of walking to Jesus even when you can't feel him keeps you walking to Jesus. It could be a cup of coffee or lemonade with grenadine. I'm not going to name some of the other crazy things you all might drink. But I invite you to lay claim to building patterns in your life that connect you to Jesus. Paul will say, let us not give up meeting together as some are in the habit of doing. Did you catch it? Not meeting, a habit. Meeting, a habit. We're all building our rituals right now, our patterns right now. If this is your first time in this space, I just love the idea that maybe that's day one of a ritual, of walking to and with Jesus. In John chapter 17, as Jesus faces the cross, he prays over you. He prays over his disciples. He prays over us. And he says, look, God, I have given them the glory that you gave me, that they may be one as we are one, I in them and you in me. It's no wonder Jesus breaks bread at the communion table and says, eat this, because as it goes into you, it's a symbol. Drink this cup, because you can feel it going in. And you're taking in my salvation, my sacrifice, my forgiveness. You know what? If Jesus were here today, I don't know whether he would talk about bread exactly, or if he would talk about a cup of wine, or maybe he would reach for a vanilla latte with oat milk and say, sip this slowly today. Sit with me. And know you are my choice. And be a family together. May they be brought to complete unity so that the whole world would know that you sent me and that, God, we love them. Tomorrow morning, you have to spend more time brewing it or ordering it or whatever it is, your beverage of choice. But when you feel that cup, feel Jesus picking you. Used to be on one of the worst cups of coffee you could find, Folgers instant coffee. Their advertisement was the best part of waking up. As you feel the steam, you smell the aroma. Consider that maybe Jesus is saying to you that the best part for him of waking up was getting to spend this moment with you. We're going to sing it. A miracle. A miracle. A miracle. Not because it's a place that we walked in. There's a miracle in there and we walked in. No, the words of the song. Because of Christ, there's a miracle in me. Jesus, bless us, love us, walk with us. May the aroma of our prayers cross with the aroma of Christ in us. May we be more and more unified because of our patterns, because of our rituals, because of coming together, because of saying it. Love well. May it rise from our lives like steam. Lord, you're the best part of this day. Best part. Thank you for joining me in my first sips.